We're happy to have you here for the 2025 NASCAR Hall of Fame induction ceremony. After operating tanks under General Patton in World War II, this Massachusetts native moved to Florida to pursue racing full-time. He proved to be a good driver, but he was an even better team owner. A mechanical genius and a master strategist, he paired with businessman John Holman to win multiple championships and Daytona 500s, guiding many auto racing legends. Tonight, he makes his way into the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
In 1935, Ralph Moody started his career behind the wheel as a competitor in his native Massachusetts. After driving a tank in World War II under the command of General George S. Patton, he moved to Florida in 1949 so he could race year-round.
He was probably a mechanic the whole time, but he was also a race driver, and I got to watch him race in the 50s on the beach at Daytona.
I can tell you one thing, he could run with any race car driver. He took his 57 Ford that had a supercharger on it, and he went up north, and I mean, he just won big time up there.
As a driver, Moody won 5 times in the NASCAR Premier Series before joining forces with businessman John Holman in 1957 to form Holman Moody Racing, establishing the foundation of a powerhouse Ford NASCAR team.
He was the mechanical genius, and John Holman was the business-minded genius on that team. So they were the perfect combination to be one of the dominant teams in the 50s and 60s.
Nelson State outlasts and outruns the competition. With this victory, the Holman and Moody crew with Ford run up a winning string of 3 Grand Nationals in a row.
Everyone wanted to drive their cars because they were that successful and they were that good.
Ralph Moody's experience as a race car driver instilled the confidence in Holman and Moody that they could go out and build race-winning cars.
He was the guts of the whole team. He was the team. So he's the one that mechanically made it all work.
This is a 1962 Ford with the body off, made into a racing machine by Holman and Moody of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Holman and Moody supplied race cars to many of the teams and race parts or chassis. And a lot of the race teams started congregating here around that geography and Holman and Moody. And now roughly 85–90% of the National Series teams are in the Charlotte area, and Holman and Moody was a big part of that.
My dad loved his time at Holman and Moody, and he really was fortunate to be around Charlotte, North Carolina at the time when Holman and Moody was in their heyday. Back then, they were the Ford factory back team, 300 employees. They not only built the engines for all the Ford cars, but also the cars.
That was Ford Motor Company's major edge that they had during that time in motorsports.
Pearson has that Torino wound up as tight as she'll go, holds on to the lead, and takes the checkered flag.
Ralph was an innovator. They came up with the Holland Moody chassis back then, and then Ralph took that design and went further on with it. He was always coming up with something to better streamline the car, whether it's aero or the chassis.
He was really big on making safer roll bars, better welders.
They were the first ones that started stacking more bars from the bottom up on the driver's side.
Ralph Moody, as long as he was around race cars, which was his entire life, he never saw the race car driver as just another part in the car. He saw that as a human being that he needed to protect as part of his job.
Ralph Moody also understood talent as well as he knew the car. On the track, he was a master motivator and race strategist. He famously had "Think" written on the dashboard to remind his drivers of how they should approach the race.
Ralph was a good person as far as figuring out how to put the people together. He put the right crew with the right driver under the right circumstances.
He was always trying to improve the race cars and help the drivers at the same time.
While back in the shop, it was a who's who of legendary mechanics with Herb Nabb, Jack Sullivan, Waddell Wilson, and Robert Yates all working under the hood.
My dad was just enamored by Ralph, and anytime he got a chance to spend time with him and to work around him, he just really enjoyed that, enjoyed learning from him, and he looked up to him and was proud to be part of that company.
I learned a lot from just watching him that I used later in my life when I became crew chief.
All that talent translated into success on the track.
There's the checkered flag.
Fireball Roberts, driving Ford number 22, wins the 14th Southern 500 in record time.
All told, Holman Moody cars won 96 races, including 2 Daytona 500s with Fred Lorenzen and Mario Andretti.
Mario Andretti has won the 1967 Daytona 500.
David Pearson earned consecutive championships at the wheel of a Holman Moody Ford in 1968 and 1969, with a remarkable 27 wins in that 2-year span.
And in those 2 years, we run 100 races. And if he wasn't at the racetrack, he was back at the shop getting cars ready to go the next weekend.
At the end of the 1971 racing season, Moody left Holman to form Ralph Moody Incorporated, an engine and car building business where Moody continued to contribute significantly to stock car racing, especially in the area of high performance and safety.
Moody's influence will be felt inside the garage area for generations to come. Just his ability to see the NASCAR parts and pieces in a way that made them perform better.
Jack Roush and my dad Robert Yates and I talked a lot about Holman and Moody and how Roush Yates Racing Engines was going to be the modern day version of Holman and Moody. So it's really in our DNA. It's part of the Ford heritage, and we want to carry on the success that they started and really carry that on and make them proud.